The soft tap of autumn rain echoed against the tall windows of Romano's bistro as Sarah Martinez pushed through the heavy glass doors. Her coat clung to her, soaked from the storm, and her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the weight of her decision to come here. Just behind her, 11-year-old Jaime followed closely, his eyes wide with awe at the glittering chandeliers and the gleaming marble floors that stretched beneath their feet like a palace. "Mom, are you sure we can afford this?" he whispered, his voice filled with both hope and hesitation. As he gazed at the opulence around them, Sarah gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze, steadying herself as much as him. "It's your birthday, sweetheart, and we're here to celebrate you. Your straight A's, your big heart. This night is about joy, not worry." She reached into her old leather purse and retrieved a card that had long been her quiet source of pride. Gold-embossed letters shimmered faintly on the surface. Elite member, lifetime access. Though the edges had softened with time, the card still held the promise of something rare. It was more than a discount. It was a memory of better days, of hope she refused to let go. The hostess greeted them with a polished smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked over Sarah's thrifted dress and Jaime's discount sneakers with a gaze that made Sarah suddenly feel smaller, as if their joy needed to apologize for existing in this room. "Table for two?" the hostess asked in a voice coated in artificial sweetness. "Yes, please," Sarah replied, forcing a smile. "Somewhere nice. It's my son's birthday." A flicker of something warmer passed over the hostess's face as she looked down at Jaime, who grinned at her with the kind of sincere joy only children possess. "Of course. Right this way." They were led to a cozy corner table, beside the grand stone fireplace Sarah remembered from long ago, a time when her life looked entirely different. Tonight, she wanted Jaime to see that magic too, to believe that wonder was still real. As they sat down, Jaime's face lit up like the fire beside them. He pored over the menu as though it were a treasure map, his eyes dancing over dishes like herb-crusted salmon and truffle pasta. "Can I really order anything?" he asked in a voice filled with disbelief. "Within reason," Sarah chuckled, but her heart twisted. "But yes, tonight's special." Their waiter, Marcus, approached with a practiced smile and a tray of warm bread. He was polite, professional, but Sarah noticed the flicker of judgment in his eyes, the quick glance at their modest clothing. It stung, but she swallowed it. "Can I start you with an appetizer?" "Our signature calamari is very popular," he offered. Jaime's eyes sparkled. Sarah did the math in her head, biting the inside of her cheek. Even with the card's discount, it would stretch things thin. But this was Jaime's night. She nodded. "The calamari sounds wonderful." As Marcus walked away, Sarah quietly checked her phone beneath the table. The numbers glared back at her. Not enough, not comfortable, but she'd make it work. She always had. That was the job of a single mother, making miracles look like mundane choices, hiding hardship behind birthday candles and warm smiles. When Marcus returned to take their main course orders, Sarah decided it was time. She reached into her purse and gently held up the golden card. "I just wanted to make sure the discount from my membership is applied," she said, softly. Marcus examined it, his brows rising slightly. "One moment, ma'am." He walked away toward the host stand, where a tall man in a sharply tailored suit was scanning reservations. Their conversation dragged longer than necessary. Sarah watched nervously, her fingers tightening around her water glass. The man, whose name tag read Richard Blackwood, looked toward her table more than once, his expression unreadable. When Marcus returned, his tone had changed. Cooler, more distant. "There appears to be an issue with your card, ma'am. Mr. Blackwood would like to speak with you directly." Sarah's stomach dropped. "An issue?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before he could answer, Richard Blackwood approached with heavy steps, his presence drawing the eyes of nearby diners like a spotlight. His voice boomed, deliberately loud. "Ma'am, "I need to speak with you about this card," he began, holding it between two fingers as if it were contaminated. "These elite memberships are extremely rare, reserved only for our most valued clients and family connections." The dining room seemed to still around them. Conversations hushed. All eyes were on her now. Sarah felt her face flush with shame. The judgment in the air was thick, tangible. She didn't belong here. That's what they were all thinking. A woman like her sitting in this upscale restaurant holding that kind of card? It didn't make sense to them. But they didn't know her story. They didn't know the years she spent sacrificing everything for her son's future. Or how this card was a relic of a time before everything fell apart. "I can assure you," Sarah said, her voice shaking but firm, "that card is real. I've had it for years." But even as she said it, she could see the disbelief in Blackwood's eyes. "Man, I'm going to have to confiscate this card for verification," Richard Blackwood said, slipping it into his jacket pocket like it belonged to him. "These elite cards cost more than most people earn in an entire year. The idea that someone like you would legitimately possess one, well," he let the sentence trail off, the implication hanging heavily in the air like smoke after a fire. Sarah felt like she had been punched in the chest. Around her, the whispers were already starting to bubble up from nearby tables. Jaime had been silent throughout the exchange, but she saw his small hands clenched tightly in his lap, his jaw stiff. His face was bright red, not from the warmth of the fire, but from the unbearable weight of humiliation. "Are you calling my mom a thief?" Jaime asked. His voice was trembling, small, but there was a blade of defiance in it that cut through the noise. Blackwood looked down at the boy, his condescension slipping into a patronizing smile. "Son, sometimes adults make poor choices. I'm sure your mother thought she was helping, but fraud is fraud, no matter the excuse." The word fraud exploded through the air like a gunshot, echoing against crystal and stone. Sarah felt the sting of tears rising, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not now, not in front of her son. "Please," she whispered. "Can we talk about this somewhere private? I think we've discussed enough," Blackwood replied, turning on his heel. "We'll be conducting a full investigation, which may take several days. In the meantime, you're welcome to stay. At full price." The way he said full price was like a final insult tossed on a pile of indignity. Sarah nodded slowly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "We'll stay. It's my son's birthday." She saw the disappointment flicker across Blackwood's face. He had expected her to crumble. Instead, she rose. Marcus returned with a clipped nod, clearly instructed to proceed as if nothing had happened. But the air had changed. The warmth of celebration had turned cold and sharp. As the manager walked away, Sarah leaned across the table and took Jaime's hand. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Sometimes people assume things." Jaime's eyes searched hers. "Mom," he whispered, "where did you really get that card?" Sarah froze. This moment, this question. It wasn't just about a card anymore. It was about trust. About who she had been, who she had become, and who she hoped he would grow up to be. She could lie, she could spin some story that would shield him from the complications of adulthood. But something in his eyes, the quiet pain, the disappointment, told her he deserved the truth. "It's a long story, honey," she said gently, "but I promise you, that card is mine. I earned it." As if summoned by her truth, the appetizer arrived. The calamari was artfully plated, but the table's energy had deflated. The magic had been stripped away. Sarah tried to bring it back, tried to smile, but it felt hollow. What she didn't know was that Jaime had been paying attention, not just to the food or the humiliation, but to everything. He had seen the card before it was taken, memorized the number etched into its back, and the name that had once offered a sense of dignity to his mother. Jaime, for all his innocence, had inherited her resilience, And something else too. Her quiet fire. They picked at the food, barely touching it. Sarah listened half-heartedly as Jaime talked about his school science project, but her ears burned with the judgment bleeding from the nearby tables. Did you see that woman? Fake elite card. Who does she think she is? Her kids' shoes are falling apart. Honestly, what was she expecting? Sarah's hand tightened around her water glass. She had lived with judgment all her life. It came with the territory of being a single mom. But this was something else. This was public shaming, dressed as dinner. Marcus returned to take their entree orders. His professionalism had cooled to stiffness. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Have the grilled salmon, she said quietly, and my son will have the chicken parmesan. Very good, he murmured, already turning away. As he left, Sarah noticed him glance toward the kitchen, where several staff members had gathered in hushed conversation. Their eyes flicked toward her table, then back to each other. Jaime was slumped in his chair now, the light in his eyes gone. He absent-mindedly poked at breadcrumbs on his plate. "Hey, birthday boy," Sarah said, forcing cheer into her voice. "Chicken parm's your favorite, right? And I saw they have chocolate lava cake for dessert." He looked up, his eyes far too old for 11. "Mom, why did that man say those things about you? Why did everyone start staring like that?" Sarah's heart cracked open. She had tried so hard to protect him, from their reality, from shame. But there was no shielding him from this. "Sometimes, baby," she said quietly, "people make decisions about you just by looking at you. But that doesn't make them right. But you didn't steal that card, did you?" "No, sweetheart, I absolutely did not." From the corner of her eye, she saw two waitresses watching them. One leaned toward the other, not even bothering to lower her voice. "I mean, just look at them. That kid's shoes are falling apart and she's flashing around some elite card." The other laughed. "Probably swiped it from some rich lady's purse." Jaime flushed red. Sarah reached for his hand, but it was clenched into a fist. "Don't listen to them, baby. They don't know us." But Jaime was listening. And worse, he was feeling it. The betrayal, the shame, the anger. It was pooling inside him like storm water behind a dam. "Mom," he whispered again. "Where did it really come from?" Sarah looked at him. This wasn't just about a card anymore. It was about the version of herself that she had buried, and whether she would let him see it. "Do you remember when I worked for the airline?" she asked, her voice soft. He nodded. He remembered the uniform, the small trinkets from faraway cities. "Well, about 8 years ago I was working a flight from New York to Los Angeles. There was a man in first class, an older gentleman. He seemed fine at takeoff, but midway through the flight, he started having trouble breathing." Sarah paused, the memory vivid, the panic in the man's eyes, the fear in the cabin, how everyone else had stepped back, but she had stepped forward. He was having a stroke, a bad one. I'd taken some medical training, and I knew I had to act fast. I helped him breathe, gave him his medication, kept him calm until we made an emergency landing in Denver. Jaime's eyes widened. "You saved someone's life?" "I just did what I had to do," she said with quiet humility. "But that man, Mr. Harmon, he never forgot it. 2 weeks later, he sent me that card," Sarah continued, her voice soft, edged with both nostalgia and weariness. "And a letter. He said I'd always be welcome at any of his restaurants. Mr. Harmon, he owns this place, Jaime. Not just this location, but the entire chain." The card meant something back then. She paused, her eyes drifting away, her voice growing distant. "But that was a long time ago, baby, and I doubt he even remembers me." "But you saved his life," Jaime said, his voice firming with rising conviction. "You're a hero, Mom, and they're treating you like a criminal." Sarah's throat tightened. This time, her tears didn't stem from humiliation, but from the powerful pride swelling in her chest. Her son, who had seen her carry the world on weary shoulders, didn't see weakness. He saw a hero. And in that moment, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Worth. Their entrees arrived, but the joy had already been drained from the room. The salmon was beautifully prepared, and Jaime's chicken parmege looked golden and crisp, but the taste couldn't touch the bitterness left behind by judgment and shame. Sarah noticed Jaime's eyes darting toward the front of the restaurant, where Blackwood continued to converse with staff, occasionally gesturing toward their table. Her stomach dropped as she realized they were still the topic of whispered conversations. "That's him," Jaime said suddenly, his voice sharper. "Mr. Harmon, the man you saved. Is he still alive?" Sarah blinked, caught off guard. I assume so? Why?" But Jaime didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his basic flip phone, the one Sarah had given him strictly for emergencies. "Jamie?" "What are you doing?" she asked, concerned. "I'm looking up Romano's Bistro," he murmured, "to see if there's a phone number." "Sweetheart, you can't just call someone and complain. That's not how this works." But Jaime had already tuned her out. His brow furrowed with determination as his thumbs moved across the screen. Sarah leaned forward to peek, but he had already tucked the phone out of sight. "Mon," he said, locking eyes with her, his voice far older than his years. "Mr. Harmon gave you that card because you saved his life. He needs to know how they're treating you." Sarah felt a fresh wave of worry rise. "Jamie, wait!" But he was already out of his chair, weaving through the tables, clutching his phone tightly. She debated going after him, but the weight of stares kept her frozen. The last thing she wanted was to draw more attention, not after everything. Jamie found a quiet corner near the restrooms and pressed himself against the wall, phone in hand. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of standing up for someone he loved. He opened the browser again and scrolled past the customer service lines and corporate email forms. None of it was what he needed. Then he remembered. The back of the card. When Blackwood had taken it, Jaime had caught a flash of the numbers etched in that same elegant gold font. He closed his eyes, trying to recall. His memory was sharp, his teachers often told him so, and now it served him well. 555 Harmon 1. It was almost too simple. But rich people liked easy-to-remember things, right? His thumb hovered over the call button. Doubt crept in. What if it was the wrong number? What if Mr. Harmon didn't remember his mother? Or worse, didn't care? But then Jaime thought about the way the manager had humiliated her, about the waitress who had laughed at her clothes, about how his mom skipped meals when money was tight, and never once asked for praise. With shaking breath, he pressed dial. The phone rang once, twice. On the third ring, a woman answered. Her voice was polished but warm. "Harmon Industries, Executive Office, this is Patricia speaking." Jamie froze. This felt big, important, more serious than he'd expected. His voice almost caught in his throat. He finally said nervously, I need to speak to Mr. Harmon, please." "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Patricia said gently. "Mr. Harmon doesn't take unsolicited calls. Are you trying to reach customer service?" "No, ma'am," Jaime said, his voice growing steadier. "This is about my mom." There was a pause on the other end. Jaime could almost hear her shift in her chair. "She saved Mr. Harmon's life," he added, his voice breaking the silence. Another pause, longer. Then the sound of rapid typing. "What did you just say?" "My mom. She saved Mr. Harmon's life on an airplane. And now? Now the people at his restaurant are being really mean to her. They took away the card he gave her, and they called her a thief." He tried to stay composed, but the emotion in his voice made Patricia quiet again. Then she said with a new urgency, "What's your mother's name, honey?" "Sarah Martinez," Jaime answered quickly. "She used to be Sarah Chin. Before my dad left." More clicking. "Sweetheart," Patricia said, her tone now firm and focused. "What restaurant are you at right now?" "Romano's Bistro. The one on 5th Street. And what exactly happened there?" Jamie's words spilled out in a rush. He told her everything. The accusations, the manager taking the card, the cold treatment, the shameful whispers, and how his mother was trying not to cry even though he could see the hurt in her eyes. "The manager's name is Richard something," Jaime finished, breathless. "He said Mom was lying about knowing Mr. Harmon." The voice was Richard Blackwood, Patricia repeated, her voice now tight with disapproval. Patricia's voice turned sharp and determined, a stark contrast to the warm professionalism Jaime had first heard. "Oh, he has no idea what he's just done. Honey, I need you to go back to your table. Stay with your mother. Do not let her leave. Can you do that for me?" "Yes, ma'am, but why?" "Because Mr. Harmon is going to want to handle this personally," she replied without hesitation. "He's been looking for your mother for years." Jaime's heart skipped a beat. "Looking for her?" he asked, stunned. "When she left the airline," Patricia explained, "we lost track of her. Mr. Harmon tried to find her more than once, to thank her properly, but Sarah Chin had simply vanished. We never thought to look for a Sarah Martinez." A thrill ran through Jaime's body, a cocktail of hope, disbelief, and pride. Is he coming here?" "Honey," Patricia replied, her voice warm with conviction. "Wild horses couldn't keep him away. Now go. Tell your mom to order dessert. This is about to become a very different kind of evening." The line went dead. Jaime stared at his phone, heart thudding in his chest. Then he bolted back toward the table, his feet barely touching the floor. He slid into his seat with a spark in his eyes that hadn't been there all evening. "Jaime, where were you? I was starting to worry." "Mom," he said breathlessly, "we need to order dessert." Sarah blinked. "Dessert? Sweetheart, after everything that happened, maybe we should just—" "No, Mom, we're staying. We're celebrating my birthday properly." There was a glint in his eye, something more than excitement, a quiet confidence. Anticipation. Sarah studied his face. Something had shifted in her son. The weight of the night hadn't broken him. It had awakened something in him. It did. "Jaime, what did you do?" Before he could answer, Marcus reappeared at their table, his demeanor visibly shaken. "Excuse me," he said, clearing his throat. "I've been asked to inform you that your meals tonight are complimentary." Sarah's fork slipped from her hand and clinked against the plate. "Complimentary," she repeated. "Why?" Marcus fidgeted, clearly uncomfortable. "Management has decided, as a gesture of goodwill, and your card. Someone else is handling it now. A representative will be out shortly." He practically bowed before excusing himself. Sarah turned to Jamie, suspicion blooming. "James Martinez," she said slowly, "what exactly did you do in that bathroom?" Jaime just smiled, a real full smile for the first time that night. "I made a phone call," he said, "and I think you're about to find out that some people never forget a hero." Outside, headlights swept across the window as a sleek black car pulled into the lot. Back at the table, the chocolate lava cake arrived, steaming, decadent, untouched. Sarah's eyes bounced between the dessert and her son, trying to decode the mystery in his grin. "Jamie, I'm serious. What's going on?" But he just kept watching the front entrance, eyes wide with expectation. Then the restaurant's front door chimed, and like a domino falling, every conversation in the dining room came to a halt. Sarah turned, heart thudding, and saw 3 people entering the restaurant. The first was a woman in a crisp designer business suit, carrying a leather portfolio that screamed importance. She was flanked by 2 sharply dressed men, their tailored suits a silent signal of power. But it was the man behind them, the third figure, who stole the room's breath. He was older now, perhaps in his 70s, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Despite his age, he carried himself with quiet command, the kind of presence that made the air shift when he walked in. "Is that him?" Jamie whispered, eyes wide. Sarah couldn't breathe. Her heart pounded. The man looked familiar, but so many years had passed, and the memories of that night in the sky were tangled in adrenaline and fear. Could it really be? At the entrance, the same hostess who had judged them earlier was now practically groveling. "Mr. Harmon, what an unexpected honor. If we'd known you were coming." "Where is she?" the man interrupted, his voice smooth and authoritative, cutting cleanly through the space. I'm sorry, sir," the hostess stammered. "The woman. The one your staff accused of fraud tonight. The one whose elite card was confiscated. Where is she?" Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Every head turned. Again, to Sarah and Jaime's table. But this time, it wasn't with judgment. It was with confusion, uncertainty, something shifting. From the back, Blackwood emerged, his expression no longer smug, but strained and pale. "Mr. Harmon," he said quickly, his voice brittle. What a surprise. I wasn't aware." "Where is she, Richard?" Harmon said, using his first name with cold precision. Blackwood swallowed hard. "Sir, if this is about the situation earlier, I can assure you it was handled according to ring to add me." "Ah." "To her." It wasn't a request. Blackwood's face went ashen. He turned slowly, then spotted Sarah. The moment his eyes landed on her, she saw the realization that everything was about to change. That this wasn't just a reprimand. This was reckoning. "Right this way, sir," he muttered, barely audible. The small procession moved across the restaurant, every eye following. The atmosphere was electric, like something enormous was about to happen. People straightened in their chairs, their earlier smugness dissolving into uneasy silence. Daniel Harmon stopped in front of Sarah's table and looked at her, studying her features for a long, breathless moment. "And then, Sarah Chin," he said, voice softening. "My God, it really is you." Sarah felt her throat tighten as tears sprang to her eyes. Her hands trembled in her lap. "Mr. Harmon, I wasn't sure you'd remember." "What?" he asked. "Remember?" Daniel's voice deepened with feeling, a kind of reverence that quieted even the whispers still lingering in the room. "My dear woman, I've been looking for you for 8 years. He turned to the staff, raising his voice with a commanding authority that silenced even the clinking of silverware. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I want you to meet Sarah Martinez. Some of you may know her as Sarah Chin. 8 years ago, this woman saved my life. 30,000 feet in the air, the dining room was frozen. Every face turned toward him. I was having a stroke on a flight from New York to Los Angeles. As others panicked and shrank away, Sarah stepped forward. She administered my medication, kept me conscious, and stabilized my vitals until we could make an emergency landing. The doctors later told me I wouldn't have survived if not for her." A beat of silence followed, heavy, sacred. "In gratitude, I gave Sarah a lifetime elite membership to all my establishments. It was the smallest thing I could do for the woman who gave me the chance to watch my grandchildren grow up, to walk my daughter down the aisle, to live." He turned to Blackwood, and when he spoke next, his tone turned to ice. "So, imagine my shock, Richard, when I learned that one of my managers not only confiscated her card, but publicly humiliated her, accusing her of fraud." Blackwood paled. His mouth opened, then shut. "And imagine my fury," Daniel continued, voice rising, "when I found out the woman who gave me 8 more years of life has been struggling in silence while I thrived, thanks to her." Beside her, Jaime reached out, squeezing Sarah's hand tightly. Her eyes welled again, not from sorrow, but pride. Her son had made this happen. "The only question now," Daniel said, sweeping his gaze across the room, "is how we're going to make this right." Romano's bistro was dead silent. You could hear the faint clink of dishes in the kitchen and the buzz of the AC vents, but nothing else. Not a single word. Daniel pulled out his phone and speed dialed. "Patricia, I've found her. Get legal on the line. I want a full investigation into hiring practices at this location and a complete review of how our elite membership program is being managed across all our properties." He hung up, then turned to Blackwood. "Richard," he said, his voice now razor sharp, "in the 32 years I've built this company, I've held one truth above all. How we treat people defines who we are." Blackwood tried again. "Sir, I can explain." Daniel's hand went up. "Then explain this. How did you look at a woman with a valid elite card and decide she was a criminal? How did you choose to humiliate her in public, without verification, without a second thought? Was it her clothing, her circumstances, her face?" Blackwood was floundering, face flushed. "Sir, the card seemed inconsistent with someone of her apparent means." Daniel's eyes darkened. "Her apparent means?" "Richard, this woman is a trained flight attendant with advanced emergency medical certification. A single mother who has given up comfort for her son's future, and all you saw was what she didn't have." He gestured to a composed, steel-eyed executive nearby. "This is Janet Morrison, my COO. Janet, I want a review of every customer complaint filed against this location in the last 12 months. I want to know if what happened tonight is an isolated incident or a pattern." Janet nodded firmly, tapping notes into her tablet. Then Daniel turned to the stunned staff gathered nearby. Sarah recognized the waitresses who had mocked her earlier, both now visibly ashamed, faces streaked with tears. "As for the rest of you," Daniel said, voice steady, "let me be crystal clear. This company was built on the belief that every guest, regardless of background, appearance, or bank balance, deserves respect. If you don't share that belief, you don't belong here." He pulled out his phone again. "Patricia, terminate Richard Blackwood, effective immediately, full severance." "He's done." Blackwood turned a deeper shade of gray. "Sir, please. I have a mortgage. Kids in college. You should have thought of that before you humiliated the woman who saved my life." 2 security guards appeared at the back of the room as if summoned by command. They flanked Blackwood silently. "You'll be escorted out," Daniel said coldly. "Your personal effects will be mailed." As Blackwood was led away, muttering about fairness, Daniel turned his attention to the 2 waitresses. "You 2 suspended. Effective now, pending full review. Use the time to decide if hospitality is really for you." They nodded hastily, whispering apologies as they retreated. Marcus, their original waiter, stepped forward. "Sir, I just want you to know, I didn't agree with what happened. I was uncomfortable the whole time." Daniel's gaze fixed on him. "Did you speak up?" Marcus dropped his shoulders. "No, sir." "Then you're part of the problem too. Suspended. 2 weeks, without pay. Use the time to ask yourself who you want to be." The discipline complete, Daniel turned back to Sarah and Jaime. His expression softened, melting into the gentle kindness Sarah remembered from that night so long ago. "Sarah," he said, his voice warm with remorse, "I owe you the deepest apology, not just for tonight, but for losing you." Sarah wiped her cheeks, only now realizing she was crying. "I got married, changed my name. When my husband left, I had to focus on surviving, on Jaime, and you've done an extraordinary job," Daniel said, glancing at Jaime with admiration. "This young man had the courage to call me. He told my assistant his mother was a hero, and he was right." Jaime sat tall, glowing with quiet pride. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. 8 years ago, I gave you a card. Tonight, I want to give you something more." He opened the box to reveal a gold pendant shaped like wings. Elegant, timeless, a symbol of freedom. "This belonged to my late wife," he said softly. "She always said it should go to someone who knew how to lift others. I can't think of anyone more deserving." Sarah's breath caught. The pendant sparkled in the light. It wasn't just a gift. It was legacy. But that's not all, Daniel added, his eyes twinkling with that unmistakable spark of someone about to deliver life-changing news. I have something bigger in mind to make things right. Sarah clutched the velvet box, the delicate gold wing pendant nestled inside like a secret too precious for words. Her heart still pounded with disbelief, with awe. Around her, Romano's bistro buzzed, not with gossip now, but with reverent whispers, the kind reserved for moments that shift something deeper in people. But Daniel Harmon wasn't done. For 8 years, he began, his voice strong but laced with emotion. I've carried the guilt of not being able to properly thank you. Tonight, that changes. He gestured to Janet Morrison, who stepped forward, tablet in hand, her posture upright with purpose. I'm creating a new initiative across all of our restaurants, Daniel said. It's going to be called the Sarah Martinez Heroes Program. Sarah's mouth parted, stunned. Mr. Harmon, that's not necessary, really. Please, Daniel said gently. Let me finish. He turned toward the restaurant as if addressing a room full of stakeholders, not diners. This program will offer free meals and dining credits to single parents, first responders, teachers, nurses, people who give so much and ask for so little. But more importantly, it will guarantee that every person who enters our restaurants is treated with the same respect and dignity that saved my life. Jaime's fingers found his mother's under the table, squeezing gently. His eyes shimmered with pride, as though watching his favorite superhero take flight. The program will launch next month, Daniel continued, and I want it headquartered right here, at this very location. Sarah, I want you to run it. The words struck her like thunder. Run it? But I don't have the experience. You have something better, Daniel interrupted. Lived experience. You've known struggle. You've shown sacrifice. You know what it's like to hold your head high when the world tries to push it down. You are exactly who this program was made for. Janet stepped forward. The position includes a competitive salary, full health and dental, retirement benefits, and a company vehicle. You'll be overseeing staff training, writing policy, and managing the expansion of the program company-wide. Sarah sat in stunned silence. A real job. A career, security, not just for herself, but for Jaime's future. For once, hope didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt tangible. Daniel smiled. But that's not all. We're partnering with schools to offer college scholarships to the children of program members. And Jaime, Jamie sat up straight, blinking. Your mother told me you're a great student. Jaime nodded, still somewhat dazed. Yes, sir. Then you're our first recipient. Full ride, any college you choose, any degree you want. Sarah burst into tears, not of shame, not of pain, but of unfiltered, life-altering relief. Years of late nights wondering how she would ever afford tuition, how she'd tell Jaime there wasn't enough, all vanished in a single breath. And most importantly, Daniel said, his voice breaking just slightly, I want to make sure what happened tonight never happens again. He turned to the dining room, his voice rising with conviction. Ladies and gentlemen, let tonight serve as a reminder. This incredible woman and her extraordinary son have shown me why I built this company to begin with. To make spaces where people are valued, no matter what's in their wallet or where they come from. He pointed to a section of wall by the entrance where old black and white photographs of the restaurant's past hung proudly. Tomorrow we'll install a permanent display there. It'll feature a photo of Sarah and Jaime and a plaque that reads, Kindness can't be bought, but it can be remembered. Applause erupted. Full, unapologetic applause. Diners stood, some crying, all clapping. The very same people who had earlier judged Sarah now honored her. Daniel wasn't finished. There's just one last thing, he said, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a new gold card, gleaming under the lights. Your new elite membership, he said, placing it in Sarah's hand. Registered, personalized, unmistakably yours. and completely fraud-proof. He grinned. Though something tells me you won't need discounts anymore. Laughter rippled gently through the room. Daniel then pulled out the chair beside Jaime and sat down. Now, someone mentioned it was a birthday, didn't they? Jaime's eyes lit up. What do you say we order the most outrageous dessert on the menu? It's not every day someone saves their mother's honor with such courage. Jaime beamed. Can I really get anything I want? Daniel nodded. Son, after what you did tonight, you can have everything you want. As they waited for what would turn out to be a towering chocolate lava cake masterpiece, Sarah glanced around the restaurant. Only hours earlier, the space had felt like a battlefield. Now, it felt like home. Mom, Jaime whispered, do you think Dad would have been proud of us tonight? Sarah turned to him, eyes filled with a peace she hadn't known in years. She touched his cheek. Baby, I think anyone would be proud to call us family. Outside, workers were already measuring the wall for the new tribute. Tomorrow, the story of a single mother and her extraordinary son would be immortalized, not as a tale of shame, but as a legacy of strength. When the dessert finally arrived, it was spectacular. A mountain of molten chocolate, whipped cream and sparkler candles. But nothing that night was sweeter than a wrong made right, a future redeemed, and a mother's love reaffirmed by the quiet, fearless voice of her son. Some birthdays, Sarah thought, as she watched Jaime blow out his 11 candles, really do change everything forever.